Hello whistlers everywhere. So today's vlog is all about cuts. How we use cuts and where we use cuts. So it's important to know that cuts form the basis of many other ornamentation. And to get the cuts right is a fundamental thing. You've got to get the cuts tight, you've got to get the cuts rhythmic, and you've got to make sure that they aren't sounding particularly as a melody note. Cuts, rolls, crowns, all the different ornaments that we use in traditional music, they're rhythmic, they're not melodic devices. So there's more than one way of doing cuts. And different whistle players, they have different techniques of doing it. But me being primarily an uilleann piper, what I've done is transposed a lot of the piping ornamentation onto whistle, which a lot of whistle, which a lot of pipers do, just because it's what we're used to and because it works and it sounds good. Now, other whistle players have slightly different ways of doing things, which is fine. There's no one set in stone way of doing things. But it's a good idea to sort of try different methods and find the one which works best for you. So what is a cut? So a cut is a way of separating two notes that are the same, but it's also a way of adding a slight emphasis or an accent to a note. So that's the kind of two main uses of cuts. So the first one, which would be to separate two notes that are the same. So if I was to tongue two A's, now I can separate those with a cut. Same thing with two G's. So what I'm doing on my whistle is, for the top hand cuts, for the G, I'm cutting with an A. So I'm going G, very quickly up to A and back down again. For the A, I'm going very quickly up to B and coming back down. And for the B, I'm going up to the C sharp and very quickly bringing my finger down. So cuts, it's really important. Again, this is where the soft, relaxed fingers come in. And we don't really want to be able to hear the note that we're cutting with, just that we're cutting. So if I do the G, A, B, G, A, B. So what I was doing with my tongue, I was tonguing and then just cutting with my finger. Now, as a little top hand cuts exercise, we can just go from G, A, B, cutting. So we can go tongue, cut, tongue, cut, tongue, cut, as I just did there. So and once we can do that, try doing it all in the one long slur. And then coming back down. eventually we want to be able to slur up and down and just separating the same notes with cuts. So and so on. Another way that some whistle players like to use this B to cut the G and the A, which is fine. You can go. So as I said, it doesn't really matter if you use the B or use the other notes that I've just shown you to cut with the top hand. As I said, it's rhythmic, not melodic, and really you can't really tell what note you're using to cut with. And the thing is with the cut, as long as it's a higher note than the one which you originally want to play, then you should be good to go. So another little top end exercise you can do is a series of cuts. So you can go so that's the top hand cuts. Now, with the bottom hand cuts, with the F sharp, E, and D, I use the same finger. I use the G to cut. So for the F sharp, E, and bottom D. So now we can extend that cuts little exercise going from D all the way up to B. So I can go. And then come back down again. So we're just going up the scale and back down the scale, separating the two notes that are the same with cuts. So the first way you can do it is tongue, cut, tongue, cut. So and down. And then once you can do that, try going all the way up and all the way down. And down. So, same with the second register. We're going to go from D. Now, the middle D, I like to cut the same. So, but there's no reason why you can't cut with the E like this. I find it better to cut with this finger because it's the same thing as the bottom D, except I've got this top finger off. And again, it doesn't really matter. If you find it more comfortable to cut with the E on that middle D, then that's fine. Or you can even cut with this finger. Takes a bit of practice, but it's what you find easiest. So, or and the same with the upper register notes. So we either got E cut, F sharp, G, A, and B. And again, we can do the same exercise in the upper register as the lower. And down. So once we can do that comfortably, cutting on the scale going up and going down, then what we can do is we can mix the register, so you can go low, high, low, high. Let me show you what I mean. So and so what we're doing is just using breath alone to get up to the upper register and then coming back down again. So going up, and again, we're slurring as much as possible, trying to minimize the amount of tonguing that we do for now. And coming back down. And mix it up. You don't have to do up, down. You can do down, up, or you can go down, up, up, down. So you could do. And so on. So the idea behind that is to get you to do two things: to work on the fluency of your cuts, to help you to move your fingers in the correct way, in a nice relaxed way, but we're actually just snapping the finger up and down as quickly as possible. We shouldn't really be able to hear the notes. So if you're doing this, then we're not really getting the necessary speed we want to get to do the ornament correctly. So what we should be doing is hearing something, but not the actual note itself. So like this. So that's what you want to try and work at. So if you can hear the note clearly, then the note that you're cutting with clearly, then we're not really doing it in the correct way. So we should be able to hear the rhythm of the cut. As I said at the beginning, it's a rhythmic, not a melodic device that we're going to be using with the cuts. In fact, with all ornamentation, or most ornamentation. Okay, so the other way we can use cuts are to accent a certain notes. So say like if I'm playing in a tune, so I'm going up to the top A and I'm cutting it and then coming back down. So I'm going. So when you're using a cut in a tune, it's just to give it a little bit more of a rhythmic kind of emphasis. So so like in the tune Donegal Lass, for instance. So the first one was an accent or basically a cut just to bring the note out. And then that one is to separate the two A's. So that's another place that you can use cuts. So separate two notes that are the same, or to use it to bring a little bit of accent to it, to sort of bring the note out slightly, give it a little bit of attack. And so where you put your cuts really is where you think they work best for you. The thing with ornamentation is that there's no absolute set way of doing it. Unlike a lot of the Highland pipe tunes, where ornament is fairly sort of rigid, and there's kind of a way of doing things that's very much written down. In traditional Irish music, where you put the ornamentation is kind of up to you, as long as it works and as long as it doesn't detract from the original melody or the rhythm of the melody. That's the most important thing. So accenting or putting cuts in where you feel they might work is a bit of a trial and error thing. It's to try it out and see how it works and see if it enhances the tune or whether or not it makes the tune or the rhythm of the tune a little too muddy, which is a danger with over-ornamenting things. It's getting a balance, really. So, but with cuts, as I said right at the beginning of the vlog, they form the basis of a lot of other ornaments, which we can talk about later on. But for now, yeah, so just to recap on cuts. So if we do that little exercise from D, and if you want to do the B on the top hand, that's fine. You can go. Either way, it works fine. And there's no right or wrong way of doing it. A cut is a cut. And if you're doing it correctly with good rhythm and good timing, then it's always going to sound good. And again, same with the upper register. And down. And there's a little exercise of going across the break. What I do is taking the earlier exercise of working in triplets, going. Well, we can do the same thing with adding a cut to the first note. So we can go. And then coming down. So it's quite tricky when we're going up. Coming down's a bit easier. So doing little exercises like that will also help you to move between the registers, going across what we call the break between lower to higher register. Yeah, and the same thing you can do as the original tripleting exercise which I showed you, but try adding a cut. The other thing you can do is try and adding a cut, not on the first beat, but maybe on the third beat. So you can go. Now that's much harder when you reverse it, doing the cut on the third beat coming down. It's just something which takes a little bit of time to practice, but as with everything that you're doing new, start off slowly. So you want to be going. and then going up. And same if you put the cut on a different beat of the triplet, on the third beat, say, for instance. And it is tricky stuff, certainly doing these exercises. So I suggest that you take them really slowly and steadily. And that's about it for cuts for the time being. Try putting them in a few places in some of the tunes that you already play. Just see how they work, see how they sound for you. And again, it's not a right or wrong thing. It's about whether the cuts or the ornaments that you're putting in, whether they make the tune sound better, whether they make it sound more rhythmic, or does it kind of muddy it a bit? Does it make it sound a little bit kind of out of time or a little bit muddy? So best thing to do, and a good way of doing that, is record yourself. Have a listen to how your cuts sound. Have a listen to how the tune sounds when you put the cuts in. I always think recording yourself, nobody else has to hear it. But for you to hear it, it's a really useful tool. Record yourself, listen back, and if it sounds smooth, if it sounds in time, if the ornamentation sounds crisp, then it's all good. And if it doesn't, then it highlights a place where you maybe need to work on your technique a little bit more, or maybe where you need to work on your ornamentation or your breathing or whatever, finger technique. Yeah, so recording and listening back is always a very useful tool. Okay, well, that's just about it for today with cuts. Great to see you all. And if you could do me a huge favor, if you found this useful, if you could possibly subscribe to the Whistleblower channel on YouTube. And also, if you can give me a like, I would hugely appreciate it. Okay, thanks very much.